So guys, let's continue with the next part. Uh, Yesterday, guys, I have introduced you. 1 minute, let me share my screen. Okay, so yesterday, guys, I have introduced you with Spark, right? And I explain you conceptually, okay, or I can say I have explained you with proper use case wise where we have to use Spark. Okay, so if your data is big data, okay, and if you want to compute your data, or maybe I can say if you want to process your data very quickly, okay, and uh, money and cost might not be uh, very much relevant or important for us. We want our result to become faster, right? If this is the case, then for processing this big data, we can use Spark. Okay, and I explain you guys Spark we can use with the concept called in memory, because entire data plus the temporary result by internal process, everything is happening in memory. Okay, otherwise there will be lots of core concepts, very unique concepts, uh, plus information I have already been shared with you guys yesterday. Okay, so today we are just going to implement Spark and understand some more internal concepts of the Spark, right? So what's the plan? So again, guys, Spark work in the concept of distributed cluster, the way your Hadoop also work. Okay, where we have one master and multiple slaves. You guys know this is called multi-node cluster. Okay, but right now, because we are very much comfortable with the cluster concept, lots of different cluster we have worked on, so I don't want to invest time further to setting up the cluster. So rather than I create a master node separately and slave node separately, and these guys work together and have a cluster. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to build a local cluster. Maybe I not say local cluster, the right word would be we'll go and create a single node cluster where one single system work as a master and same system work as a slave. Because as a user perspective, because we would be the user of Hadoop, we can be the user of Kubernetes, and we are going to be a user for the Spark. So user perspective, they have no such concern, right? Either you are running multi-node cluster or single node cluster, the way user write the commands, run the program, it will be exactly the same. Okay, so focus more on the Spark concept. I'm just directly building a single node cluster and we start working on it. Okay, so let's do this, right? And one more small thing, I'm going to set up the Spark cluster on the top of AWS cloud. Okay, even though guys, yesterday I showed you already how to install Spark in your local machine, but due to some reason I want to show you one more time, because there will be some more steps gonna come up. So I'm going to set up Spark single node cluster on the top of AWS cloud. Okay, so our setup would be something like this. Okay, first I am going to launch one operating system. There will be obviously Linux operating system. Okay, and here I am using a CentOS version 7. It is exactly equals to Red Hat version 7, right? Nothing special, nothing special, right? Why I'm using 7. One of the reason you guys might think, okay, because I am going to write a code in the Spark in Python, and the version that I'm going to use, about the Spark, okay, they are more compatible with the Python 2. Okay, and Python 2 is a by default version come with Red Hat 7 or CentOS 7. That is the only reason. Otherwise, the way you set up Spark in Red Hat 7 or Ubuntu or 8 or not 8, Red Hat's 8 or Ubuntu 14.04 or 20.04, whatever version you use, it would be almost, technically, it would be almost the same. Okay, so the base OS that I'm going to use is CentOS 7. Okay, and because Spark need memory, so in this OS I'm going to put 2 CPU and 4 GB RAM. Even though if you give 1 GB RAM also, it might work. But in my case, I'm giving 4 GB RAM to this guy. And on the top of this, I'm going to install the Spark. So how to launch this OS, you guys know. So I'm directly going to AWS Cloud, EC2 dashboard. I'm going to launch a new instance. And if you want to launch CentOS, okay, you can search here. I'm searching for CentOS 7. You find a lot of result in the AWS marketplaces or maybe community AMI. Mostly they give you free, not always. Community AMI is mostly they give you free. But if you go in marketplace, so the first version of CentOS come up, I'm going to use this particular version to launch the OS. And it's also free tier eligible, so you can use it. Okay. So they give you some charge list. It is charge if you want to use some instance type, that you guys know what is instance type. Okay, so in my case, I am going to use T2 medium. This much CPU and this much RAM. I am going to provide one instance that's we need 8 GB hard disk enough. Let me give the name. This is a Spark single node cluster. Okay. Security group 22 port may be enough right now. And obviously you have to attach the key. So I'm going to attach my key here. So this instance we have launched. Okay. On the top of this instance, we have to install the Spark. So just one thing I want to tell you guys before we install the Spark. Spark is a tool, is a software. It built on a language called Scala. Okay, and Scala is also a language. And guys, if you talk about one language, for example, if you talk about Python, so Python is a language, but it built on the top of C, maybe C++, mostly C. So one language mostly built on the top of other languages. Similarly, Scala is a language, but it built on the top of Java. Okay, so what I'm talking about, if you want to install the Spark, first you have to install Scala. But if you want to work on Scala, you have to install Java, or maybe I can say you need JVM. That would be the simple term I can use. Okay, that's what we have to do here. So I'm going to install Java first, then Scala, and then the Spark. Then it will work for you. Okay, so that's what I'm doing here, and that's all, right? This OS come up. This OS come up. And let me have this IP address, and I'm going to use my Windows command prompt. I go to my download. I have a key over there. So my key name is ST2021. Okay, and this is the IP address. And guys, by chance, in this OS, the username is not EC2. In this OS, the username is CentOS. How I know? You can see the document of this AMI. They might tell you what is the OS name, or maybe in the connect, they will tell you the username is CentOS. Okay, so I'm connecting to this OS. I say yes, and we have a login with CentOS. I'm logging with root account. And in this case, I don't have Java. In my case, I don't have Scala. It's not a scale, it's a Scala language. Plus, I also don't have obviously Spark. Maybe I can use a Spark. I don't have. Nothing is there. It's clean new system. So let me install one by one this thing, right? So first of all, I'm going to install Java. So what I'm doing here, I'm using WinSCP. Okay, because Java I have already in my laptop. So I'm going to upload the Java, and the same version Java I have already shared you guys in my some other training. I think in Hadoop. So same version of Java I'm going to use over here. Okay, so that's what I'm doing. But to log in with WinSAP, I can log in with the root account. Root account is disabled by default in what I say, in your Linux OS, in the AWS. So what I'm going to do, if you want to enable the root account, is not never the good practice to enable the root account. Anybody can log in by somehow breaking the password. But just for your extra knowledge, what I'm going to do, if you want to enable the root account, so this is the file you can use. Okay, this is the file you can use. So there will be, guys, a lot of commands are gonna come up. So what I'm going to do, I'm creating one document for you. Okay, so everything would be with you, right? One minute, please. Okay, so this is the file. This I'm showing you for just for extra knowledge. And in this file, if you open, if you go down in somewhere, so in second page, this is the option you have to enable permit root login. Yes. So this option you have to enable. So with SSH, you can log in with the root account. And one more thing, guys, you have to enable over here. Let me. Okay. One more option you have to enable over here is password authentication is no. So you have to enable yes. It means if anybody give the root password, they have to accept the password to log in. Okay. So there's two options you have to write over here. And because we changed something in SSH is a service, so we have to restart the SS service. That's all. Now anybody who know my root password, they can log in. So I don't, even though I don't know my own password, so I'm setting up my root password something. Okay, this one. One minute. So my password date. So now in the AWS account, you can log in with the root account. And why I'm reading this? Because I want to log in with WinSAP so I can transfer some software. Okay. Or maybe I can do PuTTY also to log in for anywhere in the world. So, so IP of this OS is this one. Username is root and password is something. Okay, and login. So I'm logging, guys, with the root account, and in my system, I have a software for Java. So the same software that I share you in my Hadoop classes. So same version almost I'm uploading here. It is a JDK. Or you can download the JDK from internet also. So I'm uploading this particular version of. Okay, so it's uploading over here. So that's what. If you do ls, you will see in some minute it will be uploaded. Okay, by the meantime, I'm doing one more small thing. I'm going to install Scala. It's also a language. The Spark need. But one more thing, guys, I want to tell you here is Spark is an open source tool. Lots of version of Spark gonna come up. Not all versions support all versions of Scala and all version of Java. So sometimes it takes some time to check multiple times that whatever version of Java does support Spark, or this was Spark supports Scala. So this hidden trial I have done already for you. So I'm directly giving you the version of Java or version Scala or version Spark that are compatible to each other. Okay, so so that is the reason I have one document with me. In this document, okay, I am using almost this version of Java. In this document, I have put the version of Scala. Okay, so this is Scala version I'm downloading directly here. Okay, with wget command, obviously. By chance in this OS, I don't have wget command installed, so I can use wget-y to install this particular command. Okay, so I'm downloading the Scala version. This version has been downloaded. Okay, I'm sharing these commands also with you. One minute. Okay, and I think my Java has been uploading. So after we install Java, we install Scala, and by the meantime, I am also downloading Spark also. Okay, so I have tested this version of Spark that is compatible with other version of Java that I have right now with me. Okay, so wget, and this is the version I am using here. Okay, so that's what, guys, I have shared with you in your document. You can use the same version, or maybe you can try other version also, hit and try, and maybe they might also support in other versions of Scala and other version of Java. Okay, so I think Java has been uploaded, so I'm doing it step by step. So first I am going to install Spark. Okay, so for this, same command that I showed you yesterday, tar zvf spark. Okay, so this is the command I'm going to use. It will extract this Spark. Okay, and that's all. So this is a folder where they extract the Spark. Okay, so this is the home directory for the Spark. Okay, where all the command of Spark located. Okay, so I'm going to set my environment variable the way I showed you yesterday. So this is the folder, and I'm going to export this folder. Plus, I'm going to also updating my path. So here we have bin folder, colon. Here we have sbin folder, colon. This bin folder, sbin folder, they come with the Spark commands, and plus your older path. Something the way we had done in some other topics also. So this has been set. Okay, so let me share this command also with you, and this command also with you. Okay, and very quickly, let me also save this thing in bash rc file. Okay, and to make it permanent. So that's all. It has been permanent. So till here we have done already. Now after this, actually Spark has been installed. But if you want Spark work, you install Java. So in my case, I already have a Java. It is RPM. So I can install JDK the same way that we have done in our Hadoop classes. Okay, but maybe in your system you might have multiple version of Java. So what you have to do, you have to tell 1 minute. You have to tell to your computer where this Java installed. So technically this Java installed in a folder called USR Java JDK. So you have to export one more variable called Java home to tell your computer that any program who want to use Java, in our case Spark or Scala, so contact to this variable will tell where the Java has been stored. And Java also come up with their own commands. So I'll tell my path variable that this Java come up with own command located in bin folder, plus also add your older commands also. Okay, so these two commands also we have to write. And also this is the variable, so I have to make it permanent. So I'll go to best RC file to make these guys permanent. Okay. And final thing is I have to install a Scala. So again, this is RPM file. I can use RPM IVS command to install the Scala. That's all. So these are the things, guys, we have to do. So according to our plan, okay, Java installed. Let me check very quickly. Java version, yes, installed. Scala installed. Again, let me check Scala version. Yes, it is also installed. None of the error is coming up. And Spark installed. So I can use Spark shell to check these guys installed or not. Okay. So when I run this, let's see it is installed or not. Okay. So Spark is going to launch. Okay. And behind the scene, okay, when you run this command, Spark will give you a capability to connect to the Spark with a language called Scala, because Spark work on the top of Scala. Okay, so guys, here in a minute you will get the welcome to Spark. There's no error come up. There's a reason you get this welcome. If when you get this welcome, it means that there's no error come up, and they tell you that behind the scene they use Scala language. So if you want to connect to Spark to run any of your program, then you should know Scala language, and you can type all the Scala language, variables to functions and whatever language support. And you can, by this language, you can create your program to connect to the Spark. Okay, but right now, my plan is to use Python. So I'm just going out from this prompt. So I use colon quit or control D to come out. In my case, I want to use PySpark. Okay, again, they will give you access to a Spark, but the language that they give you a capability to connect with the Spark is Python. I told you yesterday, guys, multiple language supported by Spark natively. Okay, so so this is the language they're supporting, and there's no error come up when you see welcome. It means you have connected to the Spark local cluster. Okay, so until, guys, you have connected to the local cluster. Okay, by default. And how you can interact with the local cluster with a language called Python. Python. Okay, so technically it means whatever setup we have done, whatever language we are using here, whatever versions we are using here, we are using here for Scala, Java, and Spark, all those things are very much compatible. Okay, that's what I've already tested, so we don't have to waste the time for that. Okay, now the setup is done. Now how we can use this setup to do the next thing. Okay, so so let me come out from this particular prompt first. Okay, now I just want to tell you one concept of the Spark. Okay, what is Spark gonna do for you? So let's say you have a file, and in the file you have lots of record 1, record 2, 3, 4, and 5. And let's say your plan is to count the number of records. Very simple requirement. So this is called analysis. You want to analyze, means you want to count the total number of records we have. So how we can for this, there are two approach. One approach is we write a program. Second approach is again we can write a program. But the difference is this program gonna run in your local computer and this program gonna run in your cluster. That's the difference. Okay, so what the difference come up in local, obviously we always be limited with the hardware. Limited hardwares we have. And one more issue in the local we have, if the local system fail, one of the hardware fail, the entire setup goes down. Okay, but the cluster, you guys know the power of the cluster. They are never limited with the resources. More and more slave node you add, more resources are gonna come up. And second thing is, if they fail, so maybe let's say your program is running in slave one, okay, and due to some reason slave one fail. So the powerful thing is here is, if one of the part that is running in the slave, or maybe let's say you have data of 3 GB, and out of 3 GB, 1 GB, 1 GB, and 1 GB, this 1 GB data is running over here, and by chance this part fail. So cluster is always very intelligent. They come to know this system fail. So slave 2 is not fail, slave 3 is not fail, because the other data is running on slave 2 and slave 3. So what the cluster will do, the data that is failed in this computer, they will load this data in other node and run there automatically. You don't have to worry about. Okay, so this is called resilient. Okay, so technically it won't fail. Okay, that's what I want to tell here. So automatic, everything, if something fail, it will be automatic failover. So it is also known as resilient. Okay, they the difference. So they automatically recover if any of the condition gonna come up. Okay, so this is the normal capability of the cluster, but Spark is very powerful in resiliency. Means if something fail, they automatically recover for us. Okay, plus we are not limited with the hardware, and more and more come to add, more and more RAM and CPU gonna come up. Okay, so this is also one of the capability of the Spark. So what I'm going to do, let's say we have a file. Everybody know about this file. This file contain number of users we have. Let me create one more user with my name, Vimal. So in this file, this user come up, and every line is a user. Or let's say we have a requirement to count the number of lines, something kind of demo we have seen in Hadoop also. Okay, but in the Hadoop, if you want to count the number of lines, maybe the file size, if you see the file size, I can use L here, just in 1.2 KB file. If you run this 2 KB file in the Hadoop, it might take 50-60 seconds to run this small file. But same file, if I run in my Spark, you'll see so quicker, within a second or less than a second, it will give the results to you. Okay, that's what I explained you already yesterday. Okay, so this one. Now, second thing here is, now we don't want to choose Hadoop. Okay, so because in the cluster you had a two choice, either go for Hadoop on disk or Spark in memory. So we remove the Hadoop part. Now we have two choices left. Now you want to run your program in local computer or in the cluster. So both the choices you have. So let's run our program in local computer. For this, I can launch Python directly and run a program, and that program will run my program in my local computer. Or maybe you can run the Python in this way also. It's called PySpark. They also give the Python. Now, guys, beautiful thing about this command is this command have a capability to tell you that I support both. If you want to run your program in local computer directly on your hard disk and RAM, you can do it. But if you want to run same or similar kind of program in the cluster of Spark, I can also do for you. So just one single command PySpark, they give you both the capabilities. Okay. So again, there you guys know what Python come up, same kind of Python that you see in with normal command. And if you run anything x equal to 5, 5 plus 4, right, print x, everything is look like we are running in Spark, but everything is running in my local Python in my local computer. Maybe right now we have a local cluster, but let's consider we don't have a local cluster. Okay, everything is running here in the local RAM and CPU in the local Python. Right now they are not using Spark. Okay, so if your requirement to count the number of lines from this file, you can count it. How simple? We can use for loop and we can open this file. You guys know file handling. We can open this file in the Python in a read mode. Okay, let's say it's file handling, and we can ask for loop. Maybe get one variable called I equals to 0, and we can ask for loop go in fh. Okay. And what for loop do, if you have 10 lines, 10 times they run, every line they put in j, but my requirement is not to put print the number of lines. My requirement is to increase the counter of I. Okay, and finally I will print the I. So in this file we have total number of 24 lines, but this entire computing or calculation is happening in my local computer. It looked like we're doing in Spark, but it's not in Spark. It is happening in my local RAM and CPU, the way you use normal Python, right? One minute, please. Okay, but if you want, right now the file is very small. So if you run in local computer, that's okay. But this file size is very big. A file maybe stored in HDFS or maybe in S3. So if you run in local computer, either the program crash or may take lots of time to compute. In this case, I will tell my PySpark that I want to run similar kind of program, but this program I don't want to run in my local computer. I want to run in the cluster. Now it doesn't matter the cluster is single node or multi-node, but I want to run my program in the cluster. For this, PySpark has a capability. PySpark maintain one session to the cluster. So means whenever you run the PySpark, internally they connect it to the cluster. They say, I am the user of this cluster. I know where the cluster located. Also, wherever the cluster located, I store this cluster information in a variable called SC. And this variable known as Spark context variable. You can think context is like SS. So PySpark say, I know where the cluster located, maybe multi-node, single node, whatever the case it would be. Okay, I know, and where the cluster located, I store this information in a variable called, if you notice here, Spark session. Okay, in Spark session, or it is also known as Spark context. Maybe somewhere they might print here, maybe, I don't know. So they say, I store the information in a special variable called Spark session or Spark context. So you can see SC is a command. So SC is a variable, never come with a Python. If you run the normal Python, it never come up. Who created this variable? This variable is created by PySpark, and they say, I know my cluster is running in my local computer by chance. So you can see here, they say my master is running in my local computer. And that is my context is my session. So I already connected. So if you have a requirement to run anything in the cluster, you have to use this command always, or you have to use this object always. So internally, these guys has created this particular object. Now it is your choice. If you want to read this file, do some computing in this file, either you can use your Python concepts, but in this case, they will always run in your local computer. But if you want to run anything in the Spark cluster, then you have to use this particular object. This object will internally connect to the Spark cluster, and Spark cluster is the one who and where you run all your things. Okay, even though if you run the dir command, you see they come up with lots of methods. Okay, you can see there's a lot of method gonna come up what you want to do. Okay, for example, there's a method called master. So if you see sc.master, so they will tell you where the master is running. So they say right now we have a local computer running with Spark local cluster. So they are running in my local. So technically there are lots of parameters or functions gonna come up, depend what you want to do. Or because in the Spark, it is very common to read a file or read a text file. Okay, so there's a function they give you is text file. So you don't have to guys do any kind of normal Python programming. This is just I show you as a demo. Okay, so if you want to read any file, you can use a function called text file. Okay, so if I run sc.text file, and here we can give a file. Okay, we can give the file. Now the beautiful thing, guys, about the text file is, okay, this text file is a function, and this function support all the protocol. If I look at an S3, you give the S3 bucket name. If I look at an SDFS, give the SDFS master location. Or if I look at it locally, you can give 5 protocol. So just one function, and you have a capability to get the storage or get the data from any of the storage, whatever the Spark support. So just one function, okay, and you will have a connectivity. So this is one demo I want you to try. You have created a separate SDFS cluster, and wherever the SDFS master you have, just give this protocol, give the IP of your name node, give your file name that you want to retrieve here. Okay, retrieve here, and what you will see, okay, Spark has a connectivity to the Hadoop. So this way you can integrate Spark and the SDFS. Okay, and they can retrieve the file, and this file we can store in some particular variable. Okay, but right now I'm going to use my local file. Okay, my local file location is /etc passwd, and because this is local file, so we normally write a 3/ in the local file because we don't have any IP here. So this is how we do. Okay, and this file we are just going to store, let's say, in a variable called user. So guys, one more interesting thing that Spark will do for you. Okay, it look like that this file has been read by the Python or the PySpark, or entire data has been loaded, but it is not like this. Spark guys work in a concept called lazy. Work in a concept called lazy. Means, okay, if you store any data from the storage in any of the variable in the Spark, so they are not retrieving any data in this variable till the time we need it for computing. Okay, this variable is only maintaining the reference of your storage. Okay, they are only maintaining the reference of storage. For example, if you run this for loop here, so they go and start reading the data. Okay, they're not maintaining access the reference. If you talk about this for loop, they start reading the data. Okay, but if you talk about PySpark, they are working on the concept called lazy. Means we are just maintaining the reference. It look like my data has been loaded, but it's not. This data may be terabyte in size. They are not loaded at all. Okay, So in this variable, we're just maintaining the reference till the time we need computing. But in the future, when you do any computing or like say count operation or some other operation, then they will go to this variable and ask where the data located. That time they load the data and store in your RAM. Okay, so it will save a lot of memory, and plus it will somehow optimize your thing. Okay, and and one more interesting thing, guys, Spark will do for you, not PySpark, Spark will do for you. So if you have any ETL operation, what is ETL? We have discussed multiple times. So we have a storage, let's say in HDFS. Okay, we load this data, and in this data, we do some kind of mapping. That's called mapper. And out of this data, we send to a reducer. Okay, and reducer is the one who will give and do your final computing. And guys, what is mapper reducer? This concept I explain you in very detail in Hadoop. But understand one thing, guys, map reduce just a concept. It is not like this. If you need map reduce, you need Hadoop. It's not like this. You can do map reduce with by yourself also with Python code that I showed to you. You can do map reduce with the Linux command lines. You can do map reduce with the help of Spark also. It is just a concept. Okay. So we are extracting the data from here. We are doing some kind of transformation. Okay, and after the output come up, we store the output somewhere. It's called ETL operation. So whatever we done in the Hadoop is ETL operation. What is ETL? We have done discussed multiple time in my AWS classes also. Okay. So what I'm talking about, in the Hadoop, so in this Spark, if you say this is the data we have, then in this data do this thing, and in this data do this thing. Okay, so you know what Spark will do? Spark behind the scene. Okay, if you say just go and read the data, they don't do. They say if go and do this mapper program, they don't do. But as soon as you give your final instruction that now this is the final thing I want to do, okay, do it. Okay, and this is the one who will give the result to us. Let's say my result is count or sum. Okay, so for this, now they start operating, then they go back and see for reducer what I need, for mapper what from where I need data, and then they start doing all the past operations. They do this one, then they do this one, then they do this one. Now this is like a graph data structure. So the interesting thing I Spark is Spark is they internally they maintain the graph data structure, and one of the thing is this one. So this user is just like a node in the graph. This node only maintaining where the data is and what operation we have to do. Or we have to do. Okay, then we'll tell on this top of this user do mapping. Then they create one more node. Okay, or node here is like a variable. This is the variable, also known as node. What is node? You guys know. We've just discussed this thing in graph, and now you also know one more thing, guys. Why I'm taking this part topic after graph DS. So it is not like this. We have started Hadoop, and in middle I left the topic. Everything actually planned in my mind. So I thought if you know graph data structure, then if I take the Spark, you will conceptually understand one of the good use case of graph is called Spark, and plus how Spark internally work. Okay, that is the reason I taking this topic after I have done a lot of things in the graph in the DS8 topic. Okay, so this is one thing I want to tell you here. Okay, now, so if you run multiple instruction, I want to do this, then do some mapping, reducing, sum, count, and whatever the for the plan would be. Okay, they keep on storing the information, and finally, if I say click start, means as soon as I say do some action, Then they start running all the node from first, then second and third till you get the result. Till the time they behave like a lazy, maybe it look like you're doing some operation here, but they are not running none of the command, none of the operation they are doing behind the scene. Okay, so internally they use a data structure called graph, but the beautiful thing is they're not only using data structure, because they are putting data in multiple sleeves. Okay, so what a data they put, they maintain the state. If something fail, they will load in other. That's called resilient. Okay, so guys, internally, Spark use a concept called RDD. It's not RDD, it's called R, not DS, is RDD. Resilient data set. So RDD is one of the main concept of Spark. What they're doing, they are maintaining the data set, data structure. Okay, data D is data structure. How? In the distributed way, means a cluster. What is D? D is the data structure, and R is resilient. Okay, so why? What kind of data structure they're maintaining? Graph. Okay, how they are doing computing, distributed, multiple slave work together. Okay, and what happens? Something fails, so they are very resilient. Automatically they recover and load that particular operation only in the next particular slave node. So RDD is a blocking, blocking. So RDD is your base foundation for the Spark. So wherever you guys anything about Spark, you will always learn or see this term RDD, that I am trying to explain you what is actually happening behind this. Okay, even though guys, what operation you do here, so this have maintained their own node, and this node is known as RDD here. So if you see who are you, so they say I am a file, they're maintaining some information here, but what is I'm the RDD. I'm RDD. Okay, and if I do some further operation in this file, okay, they maintain one more RDD. Technically RDD you can think is like a node, so they add one more node, then one more node, something like a graph. But as soon the last node come up, how they come to know why the last node come up? So whenever I do any computing, like count some aggregation, then they automatically come to know you want to do some computing. Then they go forward, they start from the first node, they do some computing, then they go here, then they go here, they give you the output. So this is the way internally they work. Okay, so let me do very small computing here. Okay, so if I run the dir command on this user variable to see what for the method they support. So they say I support lots of things. You can find the max, you can find the mean, you can do reducing, you can do miniming, min, mapping. So almost guys, some count, standard deviation, almost whatever analysis world you do, everything they support. Count. So if I ask in this particular user, can you help me to count? Now, because I'm doing some analytics operation in this user variable, now this user will say, I am just RDD, I am a node. Now I will go and read my instructions. I will load this file and do whatever we have asked to do. Guys, the output come. I always see the same output, 24, but this output guys run in my local computer without any cluster. This output running in my cluster or Spark, maybe local or multi-node cluster. That doesn't matter. They run in my cluster. But same kind of code if you run in the Hadoop, guys, you see, within a second it will come up. But if you run in the Hadoop, it might take maybe 60 seconds or 50 seconds. But here they're super fast because everything they are running in memory. So this is a very small code I explained to you. I'll show you some more code on this in my next class, some more capabilities. But I think until here, you get the high level idea. One of the main uh, core concept of the Spark, they build on the top of RDD. You can think RDD is just like a node or vertices that you see in the graph. Okay, so that's all guys for today. We'll continue this class tomorrow. We'll see some more facts. But by the meantime, just have your cluster ready. Okay, and we'll do more thing on the top of this class. So any quick query if you have, quick Q&A, you guys can ask. Yes, Ayush, you can override the variable. Obviously, if you override any variable like SC, it will lose the information. We can again create, there's a way we can create SC variable again. But if you override, obviously, the information that SC variable contain, it will go. Yes, Rahul Khan, you can run Spark program on 100 GB file because you know whenever file size is bigger and if you don't have so much RAM, so they keep on taking some small size, put in the RAM, do some processing and keep on doing. So there's called swapping operation they keep on doing. So you don't have to worry about, your OS will handle this full. No, Saswan, the lazy computing is not done by Hadoop. This concept I explained here in the Spark work on lazy. So I don't know, guys. Earth 2.0 is open for Earth 1.0 or not. You have to contact to my team. They might have better clarity. Why we said Spark for Java? Because guys, any software uh, uh, where, for example, if you talk about Java, so in Java we can install multiple versions of Java. So to tell your computer which version to use, that's what we normally set Java home. Same thing in Scala also, we can set the Scala home also, but we don't need here. One of the reason is because normally in Linux they come with Java already with other version like OpenJDK, so they sometimes conflict. In this case, I don't have, so I might not need here. But if you talk about Spark behind the scene call Java home variable. If you don't find this variable, they will fail. So it's all depend where you use Java. So Spark is calling Java home variable. Hadoop is not calling Java home variable. So in the Hadoop world, if you don't set Java home, that's okay. But in Spark, they call. So it's the different guys who gonna use Java and how they are finding Java in your computer. But good practice is always set Java home. Ajit, might not be possible to take a class on OpenShift over AWS, but I think all the things of AWS, you know, OpenShift, you know, you can try by yourself, right? So nothing very technical. Yes, Ranga, you can training machine learning also with the help of Spark also. You can do it. I show you, it's not to show you, I told you yesterday, the Spark has a capability to train the machine learning models. No, as such, we don't no need. If you want to set a multi-node cluster, that you guys can try. Nothing very technical here. I don't want to waste the time. But yeah, there's no extra software need. This is the only software we need in the slave node. So that's all, guys. See you tomorrow. Bye. Take care. Good day.